r/us credit.
You're at a job interview. You get the "what is your biggest weakness" question. What is your answer? Confidence. Need to stop second guessing myself and realize that I'm good. The important part is how you address and compensate for your weakness. I can be forgetful, so I carry a notebook to ensure I don't miss anything important. Think. What is the weakness? How does it affect your performance? How do you compensate? For example, I can be too brief in my explanations of what went wrong because I assume people have more knowledge than they do. As a result, sometimes people get confused or dismiss my instructions, leading to problems. As a result, I've learned to always follow up to ensure they get it, and watch for body language that indicates they might be confused. So it starts as a negative, but your compensation turns it into a positive. Whoop. I work with a company who loved that about me. Then 3 years into training they decided to switch gears into quantity over quality, and it's really fucked me up.
There would be a lot of recruiters that would see that as a huge red flag and suggestive of someone who can't collaborate or pisses people off. It doesn't matter if that's true or not, but it's a bad idea in interview to dangle the negative question.
My last job had very vague to-do lists. They were pretty much the same thing every shift. Stock X department, check dates, rotate stock, fill balloon corral, etc. So in an interview I just used that as an example for staying on task. Then they hit me with, well, how do you make sure you do things on your list? My dumb ass was like, I'm not really sure what you're asking. Just do it. Actually, this could be applicable to every job that doesn't fit anything you did before. For example, as a programmer, I might have 5 years experience, but I never worked on framework X or with language Y. My biggest weakness is also my biggest strength. My anxiety. The fear consumes me. However, that same fear motivates me to do my best. I work too hard. I care too much. And sometimes I can be too invested in my job.
My greatest fear is answering the wrong question. Me, 2019. You give a weakness that has absolutely no relevancy towards the position you see. If you're going for an office job, tell them you have no mechanical skills. If you're going for a construction job, tell them you can't type. You get the point. They're all suckers for that in this line of work. You have to have a strength of caring for basic humanity, and when you pretty much find a way to rephrase "I care too much" as your biggest weakness, they eat it up. I do genuinely enjoy helping people, though. No, they are trying to see if you have the capacity for self-reflection and learning from your mistakes. They are just doing it in an ineffective way. Think of a mistake you made at work in the past and describe how you learned from, and don't do that anymore. They should have asked a question about self-reflection and learning from your mistakes. It's a terrible question to ask, and so many unspoken ways of getting it wrong. Candidate, sometimes I'm too honest. Interviewer, I wouldn't call that a weakness. Candidate, I don't give a fuck what you think. I was asked that question at my last interview 6 months ago. My answer was the typical "my biggest weakness is also a strength." I tend to get very focused on one thing. I can sometimes focus on things which are pointless, but when I need to get a job done, I'm your guy. I got the job. I was applying to a job that advertised paid training. "We'll train you." When I was asked about my greatest weakness, I said, "I'm in no way qualified for this job, but you won't find anyone more willing to learn." It shows I'm honest. It shows I'm willing to learn and do it their way. They said they loved that answer and gave me the job the next day. Other people had experience, but they were selling themselves as "I have the experience and you won't have to train me. I got this." And that's the scariest thing a manager can hear. It's the work equivalent of "hold my beer." Never say anything to a hiring manager that could be construed as "I don't want training." Training is part of business, it's in the budget. Breaking something or pissing off a customer because you want to do it your way or didn't want to ask for help is not in the budget. and it's the worst thing a manager can deal with. My biggest weakness is not knowing when to pick my battles. Welcome to the German military. Not speaking up and saying that the question of what is your biggest weakness is a sign of thinking on your feet with information you're supposed to know, because it's your life. However, it provides zero help toward the interview process or how an employee would act if they are put in the spotlight by a customer. Since I would be a new employee and my response would be solely based on the training I get from the company and not from my life experiences. I explain what my biggest weakness is and what I'm doing to overcome it. Companies love people who fix their own problems and people love people who show initiative in their own lives. They aren't asking you what the problem is, they're asking you to show them you're doing something about it. As a manager, I look for how people have either worked on it or once saying their weakness aloud, come up with an on-the-spot way to tackle it and improve. Shows me if they're capable of self-criticism, reflection, and quick thinking, as well as creating a plan of action. Why do you need to know my weakness? What a dumb question. The only possible reason to know that is so you can use it against me. You're not hiring me based on my weakness, but my strengths. Focus on those. We are not fucking Lex Luthor and Superman. I've always been pretty honest with this question. My biggest weakness then, and still to this day, is a degree of follow through. Not in the sense that I won't finish any work that is in my wheelhouse to get done, but I will often have grand ideas and swing them by superiors and they'll think it's a great idea and tell me to get started, and then I don't. And if I do, I don't finish it. I suck at this. I tell them my actual weakness. I use too much time on tiny details and can sometimes get lost in them when I should be focusing on the broader picture. I just really enjoy taking my time and making sure I'm happy with the result. But if you're on a deadline, that might not be so good. My biggest weakness is I can think of an inappropriate joke for anything and then say it. I would say that my biggest weakness is that I'm a bit forgetful, but I'm working on it, for example making little notes and write everything down on my calendar or notebook. Went completely blank at this question, spluttered, went painfully red, hot, and sweaty. Finally answered, after what seemed like about 5 minutes of dead air. Well, I guess my weakness is being able to think of a good response to that question. Ended up getting the job. Everyone has a weakness. The interviewer doesn't care what it is, they want to know what you do to work around or overcome it. Not a bad answer for any job would be my biggest weakness is trying to make a good job a perfect job. It shows you are dedicated to your work, but also that you know when to quit and move on to a more important task. This might be more of a salesman answer. An honest weakness, not a bullshit I'm a perfectionist crap. I'm bad at multitasking. I work better when I can focus on a single thing. To accommodate this, I organize detailed lists of outstanding tasks, and after completing what I'm working on I reevaluate priorities and pick the next task to focus on. What's your biggest weakness? Trying to come up with clever answers to these stupid interview questions. My biggest weakness is a personal issue, and one that will not affect my performance in the workplace. My biggest weakness that might affect my work performance is that I may work slower than others in order to ensure I have everything done to the best of my ability. Over 80% of people say I'm a perfectionist when asked this question during their first professional interview. It's basically saying your biggest weakness is actually a strength. Except that when 3 million interviewees say it every year, yeah, it can't be true for all of them. I can sometimes be a slow starter, but I make up for it in the long run. I have asked this question at an interview, and when people reply, my biggest weakness is that I care too much, I punch them in the face. My biggest weakness is not telling people my weaknesses, because I'm afraid that they'll use it against me. I'd say my biggest weakness is listening. I asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Please like and subscribe to get more content like this.